So let me pick your brain on this for the last 10 minutes. So one of the guests we've had that I've been listening to quite a bit is Chris Camillo. I don't know if you're
Oh
familiar
yeah,
with, but
familiar
Chris
with them.
Camillo, he he is huge on the humanoid robots starting to become priced into the market. So maybe not this year, maybe not next, but in the upcoming like time period, similar to what we think the robotaxi is gonna do. Like he is way like not he's not following the robotaxi stuff because he thinks that the transportation modality doesn't have nearly as much upside because of fleet management, et cetera, et cetera. But from a human or robot perspective, he thinks, I mean, like we do, that it's transformational, but that the market will start pricing it in the next year or so, right? Like they're going to see that they're going to have their aha moment. And his argument is like, this is a multi-decatrillion-dollar TAM that has zero valuation in the market right now, and the only public play that you can use to get into that world is Tesla. And he thinks that there's going to be a gigantic amount of money flowing into Tesla, not to price robotaxi, but to price human or robot. And so I'm curious to get your take or y'all's take. Really, is like, what do you think about that? Do you like, have we thought about that lever? Have we thought about that sort of becoming like coming to fruition? Is the robotaxi kind of a red herring? Is it really human or robot? Does it take only Tesla operating 100 robots in their factories doing actual work and it showing up, however small, but it's saying, "Yo, look at my cogs going down." You know, we had a cogs contribution of, I don't know, 2% of, for the same task. We did it for 2% less or 10% less or 15% less with the bot versus human labor. Like, does that then scale to 10 million robots and all of a sudden the market's going to be like, yo, holy shit. Like, I'm curious to get y'all's thought on that.
I'll jump in
I'll
real quick.
start.
Oh, you start, yeah, Hans. You go.
Yeah, just briefly, because I think that there's a real chance here that if, it really depends on how the progress of robotaxi is going. Because if Tesla launches the robotaxi network and the rollout is slow and it's kind of lackluster and doesn't exceed expectations, and all these promises kind of feel like they haven't been met, much less exceeded, then that will be a complete downer for the humanoid robot story arc. But if on the flip side, we are blowing through people's expectations with the robotaxi, then it's basically like a multiplier on the Elon Musk option of, holy shit, this guy can make AI powered robotics in the real world into, magic money printing machines to the moon.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think we're all love the humanoid robot. That's the huge destiny of where Tesla's going to head ultimately. But between that and where we are today is the robotaxi success and rollout, and that's what's going to make the stock overshoot what a robotaxi 3 to 5 trillion market cap company should be worth. And it maybe overshoots to 5 or 6 or 7 trillion like let's say you model the robotaxi in the US and they model like, oh, it should only be worth with a 30 multiple 3 trillion, 2.8 trillion dollars. How is it worth 5 trillion? And the reason it's going to be worth 5 trillion market cap is because everyone's going to be betting on the humanoid robot at that point. And the humanoid robot isn't really going to take effect, in my opinion, in the real world until 2028, 29, or 30, maybe 31 with latest. So between now and then, you're going to have this robotaxi real world rollout in 26, 27. That's going to like transform the multiple right now, or transform the market cap right now to this first next leg of, 3 trillion market cap, something like that. Maybe it'll overshoot to 5 trillion because everyone's got their eyes on the story of the humanoid, and everyone's going to say it's over expensive for just a robotaxi maker. Just like we're overshot just being the mammoth EV producer, profitable car company with 25% gross margins. It overshot that originally to like a 1 trillion market cap. We justified it by saying, well, the robotaxi business is right around the corner, but we didn't know it was 5 years away still. We thought it was like a year or two away still,
So my opposite take of that is that Tesla had a $50 billion valuation and they were selling 20,000 cars a year. So why can't the same thing happen with the human or robot? Like, how far away is Tesla from manufacturing the equivalent of 20,000 Model S's with the human or robots? Do we really think that's 2029?
Well, so say it again, Farza. What's the premise here?
So, like, Tesla only needed a small fraction of what the market, like, they only needed a small fraction of the total, like production for them to get the value. Like you said, like, it ran ahead. The market ran ahead, and they priced a $50 billion valuation on the company when it was at $300, and they were producing 20,000 cars a year, 50,000 cars a year, or whatever. Okay, what is the equivalent of the human or robot story for the market to do the same exact thing? How many robots do they need to see? Do they need to see 100,000? Like, do we think that's a 2028 timeline, 2029 timeline? I guess what I'm saying is, in the same way that the market might overvalue the robotaxi, right? Why can't the same exact thing happen with the human or robot? You know, and so how many human or robots do we need?
Yeah.
You know, because it's like nobody's really making them. If you really think, there's no useful human or robots, but a useful human or robot is a function of the brain. And there's literally only one player that has the brain that I know of, right? And so, do we really think the brain is 3 years away from the human or robot doing something useful? Because you think about, like, you tier the most simple, most valuable to the most complex, least valuable. There is a lot of dumb, easy tasks that are worth a lot in this day and age. And the reason why people don't do it is because it's literally soul crushing. That feels like the perfect place for a human or robot to jump in. And from a development standpoint, you would need, in theory, the least amount of intelligence. Like, if you stratify the IQ necessary for jobs, most of them are on the low side. They're in the 70
Yeah.
or less, right?
I
Like,
see what you're
theoretically.
saying. So, like,
Yeah.
the spectrum, like we talked about right now, like, I think you'll have ARK Invest and Ron Barron and a few others maybe saying, oh, it should be a 10 trillion market cap company right now. Look, they already have 1,000 humanoids working in their factory. They're selling a couple dozen to this company in trials that are going to last like a year, and it's already productive. And that's why it's going to be worth 5 trillion or 4 trillion instead of 2 or 3 trillion from just the robotaxi business alone. So once they are beyond that in the next iteration where they're actually delivering tens of thousands of humanoids to external clients, that's when it maybe jumps up to, like, to the next level, possibly, in my opinion, to the 5 to 10 trillion, 10 trillion market cap, type of company that we're all waiting on in the future. So I do think that that's gravy. That would be great if it happened in 2027, 2020. I think it'll be more like 2028, 2029, 2030 when that actual, like, comes to be, because everything's just slow. He's optimistic about timelines. I can't wait to see the optimists, like, working in the Tesla factory, but it might be like a year or two of, like, trying it out in the factory before they give it to the first customers, So maybe they can ramp up production really fast theoretically, but it's going to be a lot of kinks to work out. Just like full self-driving, theoretically, we thought they could turn on back in 2018 or 19, but it's been many kinks to work out to get it to where it is today for the proper rollout,
Okay, so let me give you another one. Figure's worth 40 billion today.
Yeah.
Tesla doesn't seem to have any
Figure is
valuation
also not
for the human or
publicly
robot.
traded. If it was publicly traded, I'd short it for sure versus Tesla. I'd do like a pair.
But that's my point. But even if it's privately traded, right? They have a $40 billion valuation for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that means that there's at least some sort of market force that's trying to price this product. And in theory, if the company that has all the scale in the world to get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50x of the production capacity that Figure has, they seem to have a $0 valuation for the human or robot, right? Because they were worth $1 trillion before the human robot even came out, right? Where they had the dancing guy. And now that they have Optimus Gen 2, Optimus Gen 3, and all this stuff, it hasn't done jack shit. So, like, where is that valuation, right? Like, even if it's in let's say the private market right now, it's getting even if they're getting 2x sort of bonus multiple or whatever, just because they're a private company versus public or whatever. Like, that's still a valuation that's not being tied to the stock. It's literally zero. That's what it seems like anyway. I don't know if I'm, like, being too optimistic or not, but that's what it feels like.
What do you think, Hans?
Yeah, I think it's hard when you're talking about a startup that has no business, that might have a business. It's easy to, have valuations obviously run ahead of cash flow compared to Tesla, where it is a big mature company. So not only is it in the public market, but it's earning, tons and tons of free cash flow. And so they're just judged on completely different bases. So that makes it hard. Figure has, done some pretty impressive demos. Whether the technology is real, I think that is a big question mark.
Yeah.
But they I think one of the reasons that they have such a high valuation is because I don't think it's that hard for these private investors to do channel checks of people who are interested in buying the figure robots. And so when they, call around all their CEO buddies, hey, GM, hey, Ford, hey, General Mills, like, if you could buy 1,000 of these today at this price, would you buy it? And they're like, fuck yeah, I'd buy that in a heartbeat. And so I think, private investors are giving it that valuation because they can validate the fact that the TAM is there. And so then it's just like pricing, what is the risk of whether or not figure can capture, some portion of that TAM.
Yeah. And it's all ultimately going to be about the manufacturing. Figure has no idea how to manufacture. Like they can create these science experiments where these robots that legitimately could do it, but they're never going to build thousands of them. In my opinion, they might build their production lines are going to be all a big mess. Tesla is the best at manufacturing in the world. And they can manufacture, and that's what differentiates them. And to me, Figure is always going to seem too expensive for Microsoft or someone else to buy them, which is kind of like, if they were valued at 5 or 10 billion on the private market, maybe Microsoft would buy them and infuse a ton of capital just to figure out the manufacturing, but because they're valued at 40 billion, they're unfortunately not going to get bought by some bigger behemoth that's going to be able to, spend a ton of capital to help them manufacture at scale. So Figure's kind of screwed, just like Rivian was screwed. To me, Figure's sort of like the Rivian. They're going to have a seemingly high valuation until they go public, and then they're going to be shorted the crap out of it and go down to $12 a share, be worth like 5 or 10 billion, maybe 15 billion, and they're still going to be a little too expensive to buy for some bigger player, I think. So it's really, at that point, it's going to be you're going to have Chinese manufacturers and Tesla. That's what it's going to be. And it's going to be Tesla is at the top with manufacturing above even the Chinese manufacturers, but China is not far behind. And it's going to be a point where I feel like Tesla is going to become, if there was a company being nationalized in the U.S., it would be Tesla with all of its manufacturing prowess in this industry. So that's a good thing actually for the market valuations. I think it'll stay in, up. We're never going to nationalize a Tesla, for example, in my opinion. So it's just going to have this rich valuation that's going to just produce tons of cars and humanoids. And then you'll have the Figures, Aptronic, maybe Amazon will get into Amazon might be actually the next competitor. NVIDIA will do their thing. So that's outside of China. So I do think that Figure is a nice science. They're good at marketing themselves to investors right now, and they have cool videos. But the founder, I have question marks about, Brett Adcock, to be honest. So I think he's a big seller of of ideas, but
of the stock.
Yeah, but not a master of executing in terms of like the hardest thing, which is the production, the manufacturing.
Yep. I think your point about Amazon and then NVIDIA being, huge players in this space is really important. I think people just don't appreciate how much money and time and effort and scale Amazon has invested in robotics. And they obviously have huge use cases, and they're doing a lot of automation work already. And as that gets smarter and smarter, they're definitely going to, be national champions in this space, alongside Tesla. And one of the other partnerships that caught my notice this week was Palantir partnering with XAI to deliver AI-powered workflows to one of the big financial firms. And I just think it's interesting to see an actual partnership between an Elon company and Palantir. And I could potentially foresee, a role for Palantir to play within enterprises to help integrate the Optimus robots into other people's businesses. Like Tesla is obviously going to be super easy to integrate Optimus bots into all of Tesla's software ecosystem. I don't think that Tesla's really going to want to do the hard work of creating a general interface that's easy to adopt into other people's IT infrastructure. And so I think that's the place that Palantir plays directly. And so, yeah, I think that, there could be a cool partnership for Palantir to help facilitate the adoption of these robots from a overall software ecosystem perspective.